Ragnarok is finally upon us. God of War Ragnarok, that is. PlayStation's biggest game of the year, as well as the end of the God of War Norse Mythology duology, is here. And, as an ending, it's fitting that the game takes its name from Ragnarok, the name for the Norse apocalypse and the end of everything in our cosmos, including the very gods themselves. Ragnarok is one of the defining events of Norse mythology, as it really is the culmination of the entire tale of the Aesir, aka the Norse gods, and everything around them. It's a battle where the fates will decide the final end of everyone, big and small. So, let's become gods of lore as we take a look at the actual story of Ragnarok in Norse myth, how it is similar and different to what we've already seen in God of War 2018, and what it all might mean for Kratos' ultimate fate. The word Ragnarok in Old Norse myth translates to Fate of the Gods, or Twilight of the Gods. And fate it is, because not a lot of gods survive this one, which is probably why so many fear it. Odin, the Allfather, perhaps most of all, as he is always attempting to avert the end. This matches up with what we hear about Odin in God of War 2018, as we see his ravens constantly watching Kratos and Atreus, as he seemingly knows that they might have something to do with the coming of the end. This is because there are telltale signs that Ragnarok is coming. Signs that the gods themselves tried to stop happening in order to avert the end times. One of the biggest signs was the death of Balder, the son of Odin and Freya. In myth, Freya was so worried about the fated death of her son, she went to every single living being in the universe to make them magically swear to never hurt Balder, ensuring his safety. However, Loki, being the trickster that he is, learned that Freya hadn't bothered to ask Mistletoe to swear an oath about Balder. Loki then, for fun, decided to then trick the god Haldr to throw a mistletoe spear at Balder, as Haldr thought that he wouldn't be able to hurt Balder because of his oath. That didn't really end well for Balder, who died shortly after a spear was chucked into him. And thus, one of these signs of Ragnarok came to pass. And if you want to know more about that story about the death of Balder, I actually went into it in further detail in our other video in this series on Loki's history. I'm going to stop here and say, big spoiler for God of War 2018. But, getting back to Ragnarok though, God of War 2018 is clearly distinct from Norse myth when it comes to Balder, but there are certain echoes of that story. Balder is that game's chief antagonist, hunting down Kratos because he thinks he is a Jotun guardian who has been bothering the Aesir. Turns out here, Balder is immortal, so no matter how many times Kratos kills him, he just keeps coming back like the Leviathan axe.
When Odin sent me here, I just needed answers, but you had to act all proud. Throw whatever you have at me, I'll keep coming. That old body will give out, but before I end this, I want you to know one thing. I can't feel any of this.
Turns out Freya, in this version of the story, put a spell on him to prevent his fated, quote, needless death, making him invulnerable to all threats. Sadly though, this spell also left Balder unable to feel anything.
Feasting, drinking, women, it's all gone.
You'll never
God.
feel pain again. Death has no power over you now. You would rather die?
Never feel again? Yes. I would rather die. Yes. Take it away, Mother.
I can't.
Please, take it away.
It doesn't work like that, son.
Eventually though, Balder's hand is pierced by a mistletoe arrow by Atreus, Kratos' son, and this freed Balder of his curse, and he was immediately then killed by Kratos, because the big guy has to earn his god killer status. Now, if the mistletoe arrows didn't clue you in, we learn at the end of the game that Atreus is actually Loki himself, a fact that Atreus, and even Kratos to a degree, don't fully understand or comprehend, but means a hell of a lot to us, especially considering Loki's place in Norse myth.
The giants called me Loki?
Loki. That's the name your mother wanted for you when you were born.
Back in Norse mythology, in retaliation for killing Balder, the Aesir chained Loki underground where a serpent endlessly drips venom on his forehead, only stopped by Loki's wife catching it in a bowl. Yet Loki was also not the only person put in chains. The gods also tricked one of Loki's children, the wolf Fenrir, into chains by pretending it was a test of the wolf's strength, because Fenrir himself was also fated to wreak havoc throughout the 9 realms leading to Ragnarok. All this, though, is a seeming departure from God of War, as it seems, at least from the trailers that we can tell, like Atreus isn't in chains for having killed Baldur, but he may be at some point in the story. Though it is worth saying, being bound in chains certainly has a resonance with Kratos' chains of Olympus, a punishment that was bound to his flesh by the Greek gods of old.
Once attached, the chains remained so, chained and seared to the flesh, a part of the bearer's body, a permanent reminder of Kratos' pledge. In return, ultimate power.
In fact, we even meet the world serpent Jormungand in God of War 2018, who is also technically Loki's child in Norse myth. Yet, something that does line up with God of War 2018 is the first sign that Ragnarok is soon to be upon us. The coming of Fimbulwinter, a great winter that will cover the 9 realms, which we actually see beginning at the very end of God of War 2018.
Bit of a cold snap lately.
What he means is, Fimbulwinter's upon us, boys. The winter to end all winters.
This winter shall last 3 years, and mankind during it will become so desperate that they will struggle to survive, and all of civilization will crumble. Even more so though, Yggdrasil, the great tree of the cosmos that we see Kratos using the Bifrost within to traverse the 9 realms, will also begin to tremble. In fact, in myth, the great tree will tremble so much that it will free Loki and Fenrir from their chains. Fenrir will then run across the earth, eating the ground and the sky, as his brother, Jormungand, will rise from the oceans, spilling the sea onto the land and spitting venom all over the world. Loki himself will take charge of an army of the fire giants of Muspelheim and march across the Bifrost to face the gods in Asgard on the Rainbow Bridge. A horn will blast out, blown by Heimdall himself, to announce the moment of Ragnarok has come. Odin, fearful, will seek the head of the wisest being, Mimir, for advice. And guess who has Mimir's head in God of War? Our pal Kratos. And we do know that Odin will appear in God of War Ragnarok. Now, we are obviously in wide speculation territory here, but you did get to visit Muspelheim in God of War 2018 in the game's trials, and it's already been announced that we will visit all the realms in God of War Ragnarok, including Asgard itself, which was gated off in the first game. Who's to say young Atreus won't be getting fire giant allies this time as he heads into Asgard? Yet, Odin in myth does eventually decide to go to war with Loki. Odin will eventually fight Fenrir during the battle, who will swallow Odin whole. Odin's son, Vidar, will avenge his father's death by killing the wolf. Loki himself will fight Heimdall, with both of them ending up killing each other, as well as Thor and Jormungand, who have hated each other for millennia. Thor will end up killing the serpent with his hammer, but the serpent himself will have covered the thunder god in so much venom that he will not survive. So the question remains, where does Kratos fit in the battle? Will he take someone's place in the myth, or will his very presence change the outcome?
Another prophecy.
No, brother. Prophecy doesn't expect this for 100 more winters at least. You've changed something. Prophecy didn't count on you.
Yet, there is still a bigger question at play. What happens after Ragnarok? One version of the story has Ragnarok literally destroying everything. Nothing will be left except a giant void and perhaps an end credits screen. Another version of the tale holds that a few gods might actually survive, but more importantly, a single normal man and woman named Leif and Aesir will find themselves surrounded by a land reborn, a lush, verdant field under a single tree. If all of that sounds familiar, well, it should. Christians who encountered the Scandinavians worshipping the Aesir wanted to convert them to the Christian faith. So instead of trying to say that their gods didn't exist, these Christians argued that instead of Ragnarok coming, it had actually already happened, and was actually a prequel of sorts to the Old Testament. That this was actually the Garden of Eden story, and that Leif and Aesir were actually Adam and Eve, and that the new ruler was the Christian God. So by doing this, the Christians created a new mythology built on top of the ashes of the old one. While the morality of centuries-old Christians trying to subsume and control other cultures is outside the realm of this video's discussion, it does leave interesting questions for God of War Ragnarok. Because while we're all excited for this game, the question does come up, well, what's next? We know that Ragnarok is supposed to be the end of the Norse duology, but will that be the end of Kratos and Atreus? Somehow I doubt it, considering how well these games sell for Sony. So, if Kratos and/or Atreus survive, where will they go now that most of the Norse pantheon might end up dead, like the Greek gods before them at Kratos' hands? While I doubt Sony Santa Monica will be so bold as to make the next game Kratos vs. Jesus, they could easily use the destruction at the end of Ragnarok to move our heroes into a new pantheon of mythology. There's already precedent for it in history. Yet, this leads us to reflect on what Ragnarok itself means. To many Vikings who believed in Ragnarok, the twofold nature of the story's ending was part of the point. It was a story of both tragedy and rebirth. Tragedy in the sense that all things die. Even the memory of this world will eventually be gone, along with the gods themselves. A sense of doomerism, that all struggle is pointless in the end. But some Vikings saw it as a chance at new life, to create something new, that we can believe that something can always be built on the ashes of what came before, and that the inevitability of death should not cause us to despair, but always hope for more. And this, perhaps, lies most at the core of the tale of Kratos and Atreus. Kratos is a man who has always seen the world in a nihilistic light, that nothing mattered, not even himself. Given all the tragedy that he's faced throughout his life, one could understand. And yet, he is given hope through his son, a chance at rebirth, something new. Perhaps Kratos passing on a new world for his son mirrors the meaning of Ragnarok itself. But only time will tell, once God of War Ragnarok finally arrives to signal the end of this story. But there's still so much more to talk about when it comes to God of War. So if you liked this video, check out our other videos in the God of Lore series, and you can also find more of our coverage about God of War right here on GameSpot. So don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of it.